That leads to, you mentioned things line up. Luck. We all know hard work's essential, discipline's essential, staying power is essential, but there's that element there that you can't quantify, but you know it's there. Warren, you've had some thoughts.
Well, there's a lot of luck. I mean, just being born in the United States in 1930, the odds were like 30 to 1 against me. I mean, you know, I didn't have anything to do with picking the United States as I emerged, and having decent genes for certain things. And in my own case, I was sort of wired for capital allocation, and being wired for capital allocation a couple hundred years ago in Nebraska wouldn't have been a thing. And even now, being born in various parts of the world, it wouldn't have meant much. But here I was in this soon-to-be very rich capitalistic system, and it just so happened that what I did paid off enormously in a market system like we have. And if I'd had a talent in some other area that was way less commercial, I mean, I would have had a good time doing it, but it wouldn't have paid off like this. But of course, Jay said it perfectly when he talked about, you know, he's in there recording for himself, and the money comes afterwards. I mean, I got to do what I love. I mean, and it doesn't get any luckier than that. If you can spend your lifetime, and I'm 80 now, and doing things you love every single day. I mean, I would be doing what I do now, and I would have done it in the past, if the payoff had been in seashells or shark's teeth or anything else. If you can go to work every morning, I tap dance to work, you know, and I come down, and every day's exciting. So that is lucky. I mean, that didn't have to happen that way. If I'd been born in 1930, if I'd been born a female, if I'd been born black, I would not have had the same opportunities that I had. I mean, it's chance. I mean, my parents loved my sisters just as much as they loved me. My sisters are just as smart or smarter than I am and all of that, but they didn't have the same expectations in the 30s for a young smart girl as they had for a young smart guy. And so I've had all kinds of luck. I had the luck of, I got turned down by Harvard. Well, getting turned down by Harvard meant I got to study under Ben Graham at Columbia, which changed my life. All kinds of things have worked out. So I just hope I stay lucky. I've been lucky for 80 years.
Jay, where you grew up, you could have easily have ended up, as you've discussed with your friends, who did something, and by golly, they were put away and didn't get the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, there are very few people that from my neighborhood, you know, in my environment that make it out. I mean, forget about to be successful, to make it out alive, you know, or to be incarcerated. You know, I have a great friend, you know, who just came home, who's one of the most beautiful people you ever meet, you know, and he just came home from doing 13 years, and we were together every single day, you know, and had it not been for music and music taking me out, you know, at the right time, you know, my life could very easily have been his, very easily. We were together every single day.
Well, mention the story about London.
Yeah, so they did, you know, we were into different things. We were into a lot of street things, and you know, just so happened I had a talent to make music, and a guy by the name of Jazz, who I started out with really early, you know, he got the opportunity, he got to deal with EMI. He had the opportunity to go to London to record his album. And, you know, I went along with him, and we waited for 2 months. Well, in that 2 months, there was a sting operation, and they took, you know, my friend I'm talking about, took him away for 13 years. And the only reason I wasn't there because I was away, you know, doing this music stuff.
Oh, well, Warren, you said you wouldn't want to compete against Jay. What advice would you...
He's super duper joking.
What advice would you have for a man who's succeeded in a business where it's often short-lived, being convulsed? How do you like to businesses where you say there's a moat, where the competitors can't get you? What advice would you give on Jay building moats?
Well, he's building moats, I mean, all the time. I mean, obviously, and that's why he's succeeding, even though he's moved beyond the age that you normally associate his field with. So the best moat you can have is your own talent. You know, I mean, they can't take it away from you. Inflation can't take it from you. Right. Taxes can't take it from you. So when I talk to students, I see these students and I tell them, You know, you're $1 million asset. I would pay you $100,000 to the MBAs for 10% of the earnings for the rest of your life. So that makes you $1 million asset. Now, if you can do something to increase that value 50%, if you can learn to communicate better verbally or in written form, and you become 50% more, that's $500,000 just by improving yourself. I mean, nobody can take that away from you. And so I urge everybody, you know, when I talk to them in high school about this and colleges, just develop the habits. You've got the brain power, you got the energy, but develop the habits of success, and look around you at the people that you admire, you know, and list what makes you admire them compared to somebody else that looks equally strong or equally talented. And those are things that you can do. I mean, just write them down, and you know, people like people that they like them if they're humorous, if they're friendly, if they give credit to the other fellow. I mean, and they don't like them if they're stingy, you know, or they overstate and overpromise and all those sort of things. Well, that's a decision you make. So I encourage everybody to build your own moat around yourself.
Jay, you have any advice you want to give to Warren on building moats?
I mean, what am I say to this guy, man?
He can do things I can't do. Believe me, I can't do anything he can.
He's a brilliant thinker.
Well, this then gets to what is money for? You've greatly succeeded. You haven't made the mistakes that others made to get a success, and then you let it destroy your discipline. In terms of there are only so many steaks we can eat, or hamburgers, or whatever, the value added, we'll start with you, Warren, maybe you can start this part of the conversation. The value added you always had was you could employ capital, multiply it, which meant more businesses, more people for pensions, more hiring. That was a great service. That was doing a real public good. Yet a few years ago you decided you were going to do something in addition to multiplying capital, which meant opportunity and a higher standard of living.
Well, Steve, if you go back, really when I was in my 20s, I mean, it sounds obnoxious, but I really did know I was going to become rich. I mean, because I'd learned something that was going to work, and my wife and I decided then. I mean, she was 100% on board, my first wife, and on this, and we were going to enjoy life. We were going to have everything possibly use or need. But incidentally, I think a $5 dinner in many cases is better than a $100 dinner. So I think
with wine too.
Yeah, cost of living and standard of living are not necessarily the same. But I thought I would compound money at a rate well above average, and we decided we'd live well. We never denied ourselves anything. It meant independence, so I could do what I wanted to do, and then I felt one way or another it would go back to society. Now, I thought my wife would outlive me. She was a little younger, and women live longer than men, and she loved the actual process of seeing people with problems that money would help. And I loved the game I was in. So I thought we would, you know, basically we'd pile it up and she would do the distribution of it. And she did a lot of it while she was alive, but the big money was going to be later on, and then she died while I was still alive, and then I had to make a decision as to the best way to get this money spent in an intelligent way, relatively promptly, and I came up with the idea of splitting among 5 foundations, the largest of which is the Gates Foundation. And that was 4 years ago, and I couldn't be more pleased with the decision. I haven't denied myself anything. I mean, I eat everything I want. I travel any place I want.
Have you denied society something, that the capital, if you keep employing it, might have done more good in companies?
Berkshire's still around. I'm still running it. I mean,
I'm not doing so bad.
I'm making it still for the charities, but I'm making it for a lot of other people too. You know, so I didn't have to give up anything. I didn't have to give up what I love doing every day. I didn't have to give up any material thing in the world, and my 3 children are each involved with a foundation which lets them put money behind their energies. And no, I think it's really worked out wonderfully for me. I mean, it's been a perfect solution. And you know, when my wife was pregnant, I didn't think I was going to deliver a baby. You know, and you know, if I get a toothache or something, I don't take out my own tooth. I turn it over. I follow Adam Smith's advice. You know, I turn it over to a specialist. And there's no reason to think that because I'm good at making money, that I would be the best necessarily at distributing it. I want certain goals in terms of how it's distributed, but I'm perfectly willing to turn it over to people who are going to spend their lives specializing in that. I want them to get it done promptly, and I want it to be in sync with the kind of things I want to support. But I don't think I have to do it myself.
That gets also to a universal thing, learning from mistakes. One of the things you do in your annual report, which has become a classic, is you will discuss what went wrong, like Dexter, and what you learned, and what you learned from it.
Sure.
Tough to do.
Well, it's very important to recognize mistakes. I mean, if somebody goes around and says, I never made a mistake, I mean, you quit listening to them. I mean, they're in a dream world. So, so facing up to it, it's a little like in terms of discussing issues. You should be able to discuss the other fellow's position just as well as you can discuss your own. So, I mean, that's part of thinking well, and certainly part of making good decisions in business is recognizing the poor decisions you've made and why they were poor, and that doesn't mean you never do the same thing. I mean, because sometimes it was a freak situation, but I have made lots of mistakes. I'm going to make more mistakes, but Babe Ruth struck out a lot of times. I mean, it's the name of the game that you do it. You don't want to expect perfection in yourself. You want to strive to do your best, but it's too demanding to expect perfection in yourself, and it does some good to recognize them and not start trying to go around kidding people about them.